Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry P. Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. Also at the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, check out the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, The Larry P. Arnn Show, and more, all at podcast.hillsdale.edu.
Good morning, Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada. That music means we are in the Hillsdale Dialogue. Every week at this hour, the last radio hour of the week, I talk with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, or one of his colleagues, about matters long and hard and noble and lasting and enduring. And thus far, we've been in World War I for a long time with Churchill. We're taking a break to catch up on some news. And for those of you who like to read ahead, and I know some of you finished the 6 volumes of Churchill's World War I memoir years ago, this is Allen Bloom's The Republic of Plato, and that's where we're going next. So you can order it now if you want. Dr. Arnn, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Were you ever Allen Bloom's student at any time, anywhere?
No, I met him a couple times, but I once saw him give a hilarious. There's a man named Eric Vogelin, and he was German. He was a profound man. He knew Leo Strauss, and he was what was he? He was I always think of Hindenburg when I think of him. He was a very ponderous man.
A big man.
And I once saw Allen Bloom and Eric Vogelin debate. And Allen Bloom was lightning quick and funny. And Eric Vogelin was going on about autochthony and egopsony in Plato. And Allen Bloom's first reply was maybe 30 seconds long. He said something like, "Well, that was really good. Wonder what those words mean." Something like that. So, yeah.
I once heard him give a lecture on the Emile that went on for 2.5 hours, and I didn't understand a word of it, but it was very entertaining. Because I hadn't read the Emile, so I had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah, he was funny. He was, his Republic is, even my worthless son-in-law, who's a Plato scholar, still loves the Bloom translation of the Republic. And my man, Joe Sachs, has done one that he doesn't like as well.
Well, we're going to go with Allen Bloom because that's the one I took from Harvey. So that begins in about 100 weeks. Let's get started on this week. On Monday of this week, Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria. And they took out a whole bunch of Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps men and the Quds force. And they did it on embassy ground, which, for those of you who don't know, if it's an embassy, it's a sovereign territory of Iran. It was a direct attack on Iran. What does that tell you, and are you happy about that?
Yeah, well, I think the situation is not very hard to understand. I think Israel has been grievously attacked, and that attack has revealed that there is a fortification. Much of Gaza is nothing but a fortification for an invasion force against Israel, and they're busy taking it out. And Iran has a lot to do with the resupply and fortification of Gaza, and they've got Hezbollah up in the north, and they're attacking Israel all the time, and so they've decided to fight, and they surely have a right to fight, even though world forces, including lately us, attempt to impede them.
Yeah, I haven't heard it put that way in all the many months of the war. It's 6 months now. The 6-month anniversary will be on Sunday. The Germans had some line along the Rhine, which we had to burst through, and it was impossible to burst through. Of course, they had the Atlantic Wall, and we had to get through that. That was the Siegfried Line. Siegfried Line. So you think of the Gaza fortification as a sort of an underground Siegfried Line?
Yeah, well, the point is what it's precisely like, by the way, is what the Japanese did on Iwo Jima. They had a complete network of tunnels connecting every gun site, every place where they could shoot mortars. And then they had holes, depressions all over the island, and they knew that the GIs would hide in them. They had them pre-sighted with mortars, and so the whole thing was just a killing field for the Marines, and they, killed a lot of them. But this is different. This is a new kind of fortification, because the whole system of strength is underneath the population, right? So you can only get there by going through the population, and they know Israel will be reluctant to do that. But they also know that they have a propaganda campaign prepared and ready to go that will accuse Israel of atrocities for killing civilians. And it's not just that they locate strongholds underneath hospitals and schools and mosques. The whole thing is underneath the whole civilian population. It's hundreds of miles, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little frustrating to them that Israel turns out to be really good at overcoming that and taking few casualties itself and inflicting relatively few. And, Israel is busy teaching us something about this kind of warfare. And what we should be doing is celebrating their achievement and copying it. And instead,
learning.
What we're doing is, we should learn from this, right? They're really good. And it's such a blessing to the world that they're really good.
So Dr. Arnn, back to the idea of what the world ought to think about this. They did hit, Israeli Defense Forces hit an aid convoy of 7 civilians who were bringing relief. They're taking an enormous amount of heat from that, and I do think it's tragic that volunteers that go into a war zone get killed. But I also don't think it's unusual. You've studied war a lot more than I have. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, war is terrible, right? And it's not good for any party in the war. It's I have led a campaign my adult life to try to teach good-hearted people and good-minded people that Winston Churchill was afraid of war and tried to avoid it all his life. And it makes you do things that are not good for you to do. They're not good for you, and you would much prefer not to do them. And the only reason you do them is that worse things impend. And so, Israel has made plenty of mistakes here, right? Turns out they're human. But look at the problems they face. Look at, like one thing I read is that they didn't have many forces close to Gaza because they had a lot in the West Bank. Well, there's trouble on 3 of their 4 borders, and there always has been, and so they've got to. There aren't any good choices. There are only bad choices for them.
It would help if we sent back a second carrier group. At this point, the United States should be helping them secure their northern border. We took one of those carriers out, and I think the second one may have gone around to the Red Sea as well. Doesn't mean they can't still participate. But do you think we're doing enough at this point?
Well, we let that UN resolution go through, and
exactly,
and that's just the most obvious thing in the world, right? So there's no immediate provocation for the October 7th, was it, invasion of Israel? And remember the point. The point was they targeted exclusively civilian populations, including women and children, including babies. And so now Israel is counterattacking, and they've decided to do the whole job. That is to say, they are going to turn Gaza back into a place that's not a fort for the invasion of them. And that means they have to conquer all of it if they're to do that. And there's just one alternative, wait for the next time.
And that is unacceptable. We would never do that. I do want to make one correct. I do believe they attacked 2 bases on 10/7. They were in the way, and they were armed primarily by women who were observing. I think that was 2 bases, but we'll come back and talk about other things. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Larry Arnn is back on our weekly Hillsdale Dialogue. Every couple of weeks, we break from World War I and catch up. I'm going to Hillsdale next week, by the way. So the next time you hear me, I may be in in Hillsdale. I think I will be in Hillsdale the next time you hear me. Maybe Monday I'm here. I'm not sure. Don't go anywhere, though. You're listening to Hillsdale Dialogue, except to hillsdale.edu or hughforhillsdale.com.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest every couple of weeks. We break from things past and very far past to do what's going on right now. And the big issue right now, and we're waiting for it, is who is Donald Trump going to name as his vice president? And I'm curious, Dr. Arnn, my list is you should pick either Tom Cotton, Joni Ernst, or Mike Pompeo, and he'll win in a walk. What do you think he ought to be looking for, and who do you think you like in that job?
Well, the one that I know the best is Tom Cotton, and he'd be great. The conventional wisdom is you pick somebody from a state that you almost carry but might not. And Arkansas, Trump will carry. So he may be thinking that. My second favorite, just because I admire him, and I don't know him, is J.D. Vance. He's on everybody's list that Trump's thinking about him. I don't know Joni Ernst. She's good. She's a veteran. She's conservative. She's good. So I expect he'll get somebody good. And, the ones whose capacity I estimate most highly, well, Pompeo is a force to reckon with, too. Pompeo's from Kansas. So they're all from states that
they're going to get anyway.
Trump carried.
But I've never bought for a minute that you get someone for a state, because people vote for president. You get someone who can attack, and stay on message, and maybe raise some money. So the four people you mentioned can do that. JD is least experienced of the four, but I think he can attack. He's a Marine, so he can attack.
Yeah, I just think he's I don't know him, as I say, but I follow him, and every time he does something, it seems like he's talented to me. And we know, that's another thing. The thing that matters for the long term, back in the day, Ronald Reagan narrowed his choice down to Don Rumsfeld and George H.W. Bush. And he picked George H.W. Bush, and that has proved to be a very consequential decision, right, down through the ages, right? I think it changed the Republican Party. And, the Bushes are very splendid people. I knew Rumsfeld very well, rest in peace, and think he would have been dynamite. So, that's why it matters. And it depends on future events that are not decided yet, right? But if he picks Tom Cotton and Tom Cotton becomes president of the United States, or Mike Pompeo, or J.D. Vance, I'm forgetting one of them now.
Senator Ernst. I'm looking for a fusion
candidate. The most
candidate.
talented one.
I'm looking for a fusion candidate, Dr. Arnn, meaning someone who can take the MAGA Republicans, who are generally new and different agenda, and the Reagan conservatives that would include me and you, and combine them. And so JD may not have much appeal to the traditional Reagan Republicans. They don't know him. Maybe he would, but that's what I'm looking for. Someone who that can straddle that. Not much of a divide, but there are some issues on which there is a division.
Well, if we've been talking about war on this show quite a lot, and it looks to me like the split of substance in the Republican Party has two parts. One part is war. We have been at war now. I'm an old man, and we've been at war longer than that. And be fine if we could win one of these days.
It would be a good thing. 1991 would be good to see again, and we didn't really win that because we didn't get rid of Saddam.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, this is nobody of all of the smart people in the debate about American foreign policy, none of the smart people are dumb. And that means that there are people who there's a heck of an argument to make on both sides, right? And since the Vietnam War, remember that was the Soviet Union posed a new kind of problem, right? And what are we doing? Are we stopping now?
Yeah, hold that stop. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, America. I love it when someone from Arkansas says Vietnam. They see Vietnam all the time. And I remember the old song, I love Arkansas for some reason. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Arnn. We'll be right back. Welcome back, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our previous conversations, including our long series on World War I, Churchill's memoir on it, are all collected at hugh4hillsdale.com, Hughfor Hillsdale.com. That's Dr. Larry Arnn that you see there. Dr. Arnn, I had a show this week where I put forward the proposition to a number of political reporters that we could hold the vote today. There aren't any undecided voters left. Everyone is decided. They're going to be for Trump, they're going to be for Biden, or they're going to vote for a third-party candidate or stay home. Everybody knows what they're going to do. Do you agree with my proposition that the ice is frozen over this race?
Yeah, I do, except for one difference, and that is that's an irrelevant point. And the reason is
There, I had you agree with me. I'm going to just edit the tape. Yeah, I do, and I'm just going to cut the rest of that out.
You slandered Arkansas before the break, and I will say that if the whole nation were like Arkansas, I wouldn't have to come on the radio and talk to you about
I didn't slander. I said you pronounce Vietnam differently than the rest of the country.
Dom. Yeah, no. So here's the election is going to be decided by a get out the vote effort. And that's a euphemism for every kind of skullduggery that anybody can practice, including your famous, I hope you've made it famous now, back in the alley voting booth that you like to photograph.
Oh, I put the photo out.
Lot,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, in the park, in the back of the park where there are no lights. Yeah, vote here.
And there's 5 or 6 or 7 states. And remember, the perilous situation in which we are is, I mean, it's you have to look to the great crises in American history to find anything like it. The President of the United States has designated Easter as Transgender Invisibility Day in the same year in which he has forbidden Easter eggs at the Easter egg hunt in the White House from having any religious references on them. And so the point is, and that's the world we live in.
I was unaware of that latter point. I didn't know that. I can't believe they did that.
There you go.
I just can't believe they did that. What is the Easter egg roll about?
I have read it, and so it must be true.
It must be true if you read it on the internet.
Yeah, I read it somewhere. But that whole, I mean, if it's not true, I apologize and withdraw. But I did read it, and the point is, what's all this about, right? And then since voting is the fulcrum of the American political system, right? The constitutional system is contrived so that our influence on the government is confined to voting. Madison's expression for it is that it is an entirely representative system. That means we're the sovereign. We, the constitutional majority, are the sovereign, but we don't do anything except vote for representatives. Well, the initiative for voting has passed into extensively into large machines, right? People, very large organized efforts to get ballots in the hands of people and wait while they can, if it's honest, wait while they cast them. Churchill says this beautiful thing. He says, the strength and security of Britain is the little man alone in the voting booth, right? You walk in there, you close the curtain, you make up your mind. Nobody knows what you did. Now, somebody's waiting while you vote.
The little man.
They brought you a ballot.
Also depended upon their having a clue as to what was actually going on. I've been waiting all week to read this to you. I'm not going to tell you the author of this until I'm done. A cause of many of our mistakes and problems is ignorance, an overwhelming national ignorance of the facts about the rest of the world. A nation or an individual cannot function unless the truth is available and understood. No amount of good on the part of our leaders or the media will offset ignorance and apathy in the common citizens. Since the United States is a democracy, the broad answer is that all of us must become better informed. Reading is one method of accomplishing this purpose. By spending a few dollars for a book, the thoughts and life's work of a great man are available to us. As a reader, man is unique among living things. The ability to read, and more broadly, the ability to express complex ideas through language, distinguishes him from all other life forms. Without language, complex thought is inconceivable and the mind is undeveloped. The inability to speak and write imprisons thought. In the same vein, sloppy, imprecise thinking begets sloppy, imprecise language. Language and thought are interconnected, and the written word is the vehicle which advances both best. Therefore, I count reading and its associated skill among the most significant of all human efforts. Earlier, this writer quoted Aristotle in this regard. What do you make of this writer's point of view? And then I'll tell you who it is and when it was written.
Okay, well, I'll guess it's either Adolf Hitler or Winston Churchill. So I of course agree with that. Also,
it is Admiral Rickover, Hyman Rickover, who is the man most responsible for the defense of the United States because he invented the nuclear navy, without which we'd be screwed right now. And it was given in 1979 when he gave a commencement address at Hampton-Sydney College. And he was basically ripping them on not reading.
Okay, but so I will. That's of course true. Remember, I'm in the education business.
Yep.
We've helped to start more than 100 charter schools. Right, every kindergartner learns to read, but I would change the emphasis of this because of the context in which it came up. What matters is not so much, in my opinion, the education of the voter. The voter must take the initiative and be a citizen. And I'll tell you why I think that. First of all, we are made by nature to read because we are the defining characteristic of us. If Admiral Rickover knows his Aristotle or knew his Aristotle, he would know this. Reading is just an extension of the defining human. Well, maybe he quotes him, maybe he doesn't. But the defining human characteristic is speech, talking. Only we do that. And if you can talk, you can read. That's why it's shameful that it's so hard for us these days to teach children to read.
Yep.
They're made to read. And Churchill says this, by the way. It's a very beautiful thing, right? We must not become, I say it as an antidote to a tendency of us to become aristocrats. Because, we're coming under the rule of a false sort of aristocracy right now.
Yes, we are.
Churchill writes to H.G. Wells when he's 27 years old. He said, I cannot agree that a future society can be ruled by experts. Expert knowledge is narrow knowledge, and the common sense of the plain man who only knows what hurts is better. I think the American people are closer to figuring all this out than the faculty of Harvard right now.
Oh, my goodness. That's so easy, though. That's that can't be refuted. You've made a proposition that is obviously true.
Yeah, but just think how that applies to that Rickover quote, because it's just true that the consent of the governed is a simple thing. You can't use the mighty force of law against people unless they have consented to you doing so and the way that you do it. You see? And that means that that what I worry about in all these voting is not the qualification of the voters. I worry about whether the initiative remains in them.
That is a good thing to worry about. I do want to read you the paragraph. There's a paragraph right before the two that I read to you that I want to know if you think is correct. It begins, Aristotle believed that happiness was to be found in the use of the intellect. In other words, ignorance is not bliss, it is oblivion. The inspired prayer does not ask for health, wealth, prosperity, or anything material, but says, quote, God, illumine my intellect, close quote. Is he right about that?
He wrote a lot about that. That's not quite true. That's not quite what he wrote. What Aristotle writes, Aristotle is more beautiful than Admiral Rico appears to know. If your son-in-law, a brave man, I think you got two of them who are, if they were to die committing a betrayal, you would grieve over that for the rest of your life.
Yes.
If they were to die committing an act of heroism, you would grieve with a tinge of pride, right? So in other words, happiness also consists in the practice of the moral virtues. And the human being is a rational soul in a mortal body. And so the complete human being is the intellectual and the moral virtues in operation. And Aristotle is so emphatic about that he does say that the highest human activity is the contemplation of ultimate and beautiful things. And then he says that if you are afraid of the flies buzzing around you, you will not be able to achieve that. In other words, the contemplative man must be a courageous man.
Oh, very well said. On that, take a break. We'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. I'm talking with Dr. Larry Arnn, and we're going to come back and talk about British politics, something with which he's acquainted because he had the good, fine sense to marry an Englishwoman. Stay tuned.
Would you turn down millions of dollars per year? All you'd have to do is surrender your independence and abandon your principles for the money. That's a devil's bargain. Sadly, it's one that almost all American colleges and universities make. But one college in America says no. Our college, Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College refuses to accept 1 penny of taxpayer money, not even indirectly in the form of federal student grants and loans. By saying no to taxpayer money, we remain genuinely independent, free to pursue our original 1844 mission, pursuing truth and defending liberty. Hillsdale has over 1,500 undergraduate and graduate students on its main campus in Michigan and its satellite campus in Washington, D.C. In addition, over 3 million citizens have enrolled in our free online courses, and over 6 million American households receive our free monthly publication Imprimis delivered in the mail. You can learn more about Hillsdale's independence from government, its mission of defending liberty, and its national educational outreach programs at hillsdale.edu/penny. That's hillsdale.edu/penny. Or, if it's more convenient, text the word penny to 71844, and we'll send you a link with more information on Hillsdale's independence. That's penny to 71844.
Welcome back, America. I always send Dr. Arnn an outline when we're doing current events, and I send him this LA's POV on Sunak and Cameron. Parens, I think they are going to get blown out, and that's not a bad thing as they are hardly Thatcher's heirs, close quote. Since that came out, Dr. Arnn, Michael Gove said, look for November, middle of November for the general election, and the prediction is the Tories will fall below 100 seats. What do you think about Rishi Sunak, David Cameron, and the Tories getting blown out? I'm not unhappy with that, actually. It'll be a long 5 years for Britain, but I'm not unhappy with destroying what the remnants of the Conservative Party are.
Well, first of all, they deserve it, which makes it worse. They have done terrible things. They've been looking for a leader. They got Boris Johnson. He bet the whole economy on net zero, which everybody knows now is stupid, right? It's very possible, by the way, that we're going to end up living on an entirely sustainable energy. And I hope it happens. Wouldn't that be great? I also think that it's not necessary, and right now it's undoable. And so he took a country sorely pressed in its public finances, and he bet, a third of the economy or something on that thing. And why did he do that? It was a fancy. So he fell, and they put Liz Truss in, and she came in talking like Margaret Thatcher, and they threw her out in a month, right? And so now it's this manager class. Lately, by the way, they have been doing some things to move back toward, there are two things. There are two points of view. Either you think that the initiative of a person's well-being in life is in the person, and that also applies to the nation, or else you think that a managerial class should manage everything, and they are the ones who make everything happy and prosperous. And if you think that second thing, then you're a modern contemporary leader of the Tory party.
And you're Rishi Sunak or you're David Cameron. And I'm sure David Cameron's a very wonderful guy, but I've never seen anyone be more wrong about Israel more quickly than David Cameron, now Lord Cameron. And I don't know that I want him anywhere near the War Office. I don't know that the Labour Party can do worse than David Cameron.
I don't know. He was really bad, but they're trying to turn you into a liar because they found some really bad ones, and it's it's a tough competition to be the worst these days over there, and here for that matter. And so, it's just, I grieve over it. My wife has got me reading the Daily Telegraph again. She has been a faithful reader of the British press.
Yes.
For my 44 years. And, the British are better journalists than we are.
Much better.
Both good and bad. And they read newspapers a lot more than we do. And so I've been reading the Daily Telegraph, and I cringe mostly when I read it these days. And the Labour guys are, they're going to be terrible. And that means what choice have the poor British people?
Yeah, they put up Keir Starmer, who's a normal guy. He seems like he's right from the center left. But it's going to be like Biden. He's going to pack the government with crazy people. And then we're going to end up with Easter without messages about Christ. And we're going to end up with way worse economics. But in order to get a Thatcher government back, they got to throw this guy out and put Ben Wallace in, or somebody like Ben Wallace.
Mark Stein, a great man, has a website called the Mark Stein Club, and you can see a lot of stuff on it for free. I'm a member. And if you want to get gloomy, read him. And alas, he's extremely talented. And he's, he will describe things going on in Britain that are simply horrific.
Ever since we moved to the afternoons, Mark won't get up early enough to talk to me, and we miss him greatly. He was our most popular guest for many years. So I didn't know about the Mark Stein Club.
Yeah, well, he's a great man, and he was here on the campus not long ago. I did a podcast with him, but I happened on to the Mark Stein Club a year and a half ago, and I read his email every day. And sometimes, but he has built a world on that club in which his talents can be deployed. And it had to be a unique world because his talents are unique.
Oh, he's so good.
Music buff, a composer. He has the poem of the week. He's got a novel on there that he's written.
And you know what else, Larry? When I die, I hope I predecease Mark Stein because I'm going to have him send a note that he's got to write the obit because he writes the best obituaries in the world. That's Dr. Larry Arnn. I will be at Hillsdale on Monday. I will see you in person or Tuesday, one or the other. I can't really remember, but I'll be up there sometime next week. I hope it's spring. It's Michigan, so that's a debatable thing. Everything Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, including the application that you've got to get now in order to file it because you're running out of time for 2024, 2025. Thank you for listening, America. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Harley. Thank you, Dwayne. I am Hugh Hewitt.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.